Good morning, it's Charlene Sinjenko from Powerhouse, and I'm pleased to welcome you this morning to our first in a series called Gather for Her. And I'm just going to do a really quick introduction. This is just meant to be a short conversation. Gather for Her is going to run on a regular basis for the next while, and it's where we convene and connect for some purposeful conversation and sharing and tracking and listening for collective wisdom. So what is it that we are practicing? What do we need to know right now? What do we need to share with each other? Thank you for those who have gathered with us today to be part of this conversation. And I just want to introduce our guests. I'm first going to introduce Gilfoy, who is the CEO of the Van City Community Investment Bank. And I'm grateful to have Jan with us this morning. I'm going to introduce our moderator for the conversation. This is Christina Benty of Strategic Leadership Solutions, who is also a Powerhouse partner and a facilitator with us. This is Tina Overbury from Tina O Life. And she works closely with Powerhouse as our core story tracker. And I'm Charlene Sinjenko, and I am an impact media producer who builds strong women who lead for impact. So the purpose of our conversation is what needs to be said right now? What are we listening for? How are we sharing that? How are we recording it? So 10 years from now, we can actually pass this story on should the women coming up behind us need to hear this wisdom. So it's an interesting time. I'm going to exit stage left virtually, and I'm going to invite my good friend, Sharon Marshall, to join us. Sharon is from Diva Training and Staffing Solutions, and she is our Powerhouse graphic facilitator. She's actually going to be drawing out the conversation as we have it. So thank you for joining us, and I'll be here in 30 or so minutes to do a quick closing. Thanks for being here, and I will just take myself off for now, and we may need to take Tina off to get Sharon on. We'll just see how we go here. But thank you very much, and we'll chat with you later.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Happy April Fool's Day. So I actually wanted to. It's great to be great to have Jan here joining us in this conversation, and I got to know Jan in Mexico a little bit, so it's not like we don't know each other. And I'm excited that you're here and we can have this conversation. Before we actually get started, hey Sharon, yay! And hopefully Tina will be back on shortly. So Jan, I think that the intention of our conversation today is really around what we're experiencing in the world right now. It's April 1st, 2020, and maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself, what's happening in your world before we dive into some of the questions that Shar has given us, some of the juicy questions that Char's given us to think about.
So I'm the CEO of Van City Community Investment Bank. We are a subsidiary of Van City Credit Union, and our mission is to finance a sustainable tomorrow. So we've been up and running in Ontario primarily for the last 2 years, really focusing on organizations that are doing something positive for the world. Two kind of key focus areas for us have been affordability. It's a big issue in Ontario, big issue in British Columbia, trying to make sure that vulnerable populations and others have a place to live so that they can have a quality of life, and also around environmental sustainability. So we were, building a business. We're building a business. We're building customers. We're entering in new markets. We're working with governments to have these great conversations about making sure finance gets to the needs that are out there. And our first quarter was, the best that we've had. All of the stories that you're hearing, and then all of a sudden, this hit. So So we've been actively working on a lot of fronts. So we've pivoted our energy to make sure that we are helping communities thrive. So we've been able to seed a little bit of money into 3 different foundations who are going to provide services for people around food, shelter, and healthcare for vulnerable populations in the Toronto area, Toronto, Hamilton, and Ottawa. I've been actively, trying to engage my team and keep a virtual organization going at the board level, at the employee level. We've got a number of people. I've got an employee who's pregnant and due any day. I've got 3 or 4 young people who are working in Toronto, but their families are elsewhere. I've got everything that you can possibly imagine, right? So trying to keep people employed, keep people working, focusing on the work that we're doing. We still have activity happening in the business. We've got some of our customers that are obviously affected by this because they were organizations that gathered people, right? So the whole social distancing thing has really impacted a lot of the organizations that we support. And so we're working with them on how we do the things that are out there, like deferring payments and helping them kind of get through this period. So that's like I guess the high level kind of things about where we're at. So actively looking at every day something new happens and how do we shift and how do we pivot? How do we lead virtually? We've done things like a fun little cocktail hour at the end of Fridays. Trying to keep people engaged, trying to deal with the stress and the mental health. I think that's going to be one of the long-term impacts of what's going on is we're going to face, a higher level of mental health issues as people deal with this. So it's been a ride for sure.
Yeah, has it ever? That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting that you're talking about some of the basics in our life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Food, shelter, work, our mental and emotional and physical health, right? Some of those very, very basic, we're kind of back down to those basics.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the questions that Charlene kind of gave us to chew on, and maybe you and I can discuss this further. What is it, what does reclaiming our human spirit mean to you? Like you're leading a team, you're having, like you said, to pivot and to shift after having some of your best quarter, and then all of a sudden everything changes, right? And so we're asking the kind of questions that sort of bring us back down to the basics, right? So what does that mean to you?
In terms of how you show up as a human being, back to the basics. Yeah. I think it's been a roller coaster ride a bit, right? So there are days when I feel like I'm in control. I feel like I've got this. I've got the right sort of attitude around focusing on the future. I feel like, okay, I can weather this, and like I kind of get into that headspace, and I can do my, I have a little mantra that I do, and I kind of go back to some of the work that we did in November, and I go, oh yeah, this is going to be like the best decade ever, right? So there's days that I can do that, and then there's other times when I'm just overwhelmed by the unknown, right? So I kind of have sort of picked some time frames in my head of when I think we're going to come out of this, because I need to have some anchor points to kind of keep me focused on the important work that we're doing. I think the outcome of this will be a changed world, and I think a lot of the work that we've been doing the last number of years, both at Vancity, the credit union, who's been in this game for a very long time, and us at the bank, I think we're going to see abundance come out of this in terms of a different way of thinking about things. When we see things like Air Canada, which has been a great organization, and I'm on a plane all the time, so I absolutely love their customer service and the way they've been able to up their game internationally. When you hear that they're asking for a bailout, that they didn't even have enough money to kind of get through, 4 to 6 to maybe 8 weeks of disruption, it kind of hits to the core of, okay, what is stable and what's not. So I think getting back, coming back into who you are and what makes you happy and what gets you energized, and finding those little wins every day, whether it's a good workout that I had a great workout this morning, or it's time with my daughter who's now home. Her and I walk the dog every day for multiple times a day. The dog does not know what's going on. She's like, would you people please go back to work because you're killing me. I'm just trying to find some joy and some fun things, whether it's watching some funny thing on TV or sharing a funny video, or like kind of getting back to those real basics around family, self-care, community. Trying to find those places where you can make a difference in a time when we're all feeling completely out of control.
Yeah, that word control, I think, is really, it's a big one right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we live often under the illusion of control, and we're in a situation that we have virtually no control over, that's changing every day, right? And so I think, what you're talking about is asking yourself, where are the places that I do have control, right? I have control over, I have control over my physical health, right?
Yeah.
And you may not, right? But when you do, where are the places where I have control, and what can I choose to react to and respond to in the areas that I actually do have?
Yeah. I think the other thing for me is, I've been running at such a pace, as we all have. Like, I think this is the key lesson, at least that I'm trying to lean into, is we've all been running at such a pace. I heard stories from my team of, like, my life has been, I get up in the morning, I go to work, I drop my kids off at school, I go to work, they go to after school care, they're in hockey, they're in soccer, they're in dance, they're in all this stuff, they're busy, I'm busy, we never connect till 9 o'clock at night. And so I think we've been running at such a pace that we've forgotten some of the basics around empathy and connection. And now you've taken away the physical connection. So all we have are the people who live in our house, and maybe the people who live in our community where we can stay far enough away from them but talk to them.
Yeah.
And this sort of medium. So how do you show up with empathy and gratitude on a daily basis? So I'm trying really hard to think about how others are, what's happening for others. And I'm, hey, look, I'm fine. I have a nice house. I can have food on the table. I've got great. I still have my job. Like, so trying to just really be real about, and humble about all of that stuff, and be real to the energy that's floating around us.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. What can we be thankful for?
Mm-hmm.
What do we have in our lives what's working well? That being said, also being really compassionate for the times that we're grieving, right? And I think that there's a collective grieving that's going on. I don't know if I was thinking about this morning, because I remember when I lost a really close friend last year, and I remember waking up in the morning, and your first thought is around everything's right in the world, and then the dreadful thought of, oh, I'm not going to see this person again, right? And the sadness, that sort of overwhelming sadness would come. So recognizing that this is actually happening to us in the collective space, that everybody's lives right now is different. There's a lot of unknowns, a lot of uncertainty. We're all managing that grief, and how can we be sort of like kind to ourselves, kind to people in our life, in our circle, but also kind to that collective grieving. I think that's going on, and recognizing that it's having an impact on people's energy. And so that question of reclaiming our human spirit, right, is so key. There's Tina, yay!
Yeah, I think I read an article in it. There's a Harvard Business Review article that we've circulated amongst our staff within the organization, and that's exactly what it talks about. That we are going through. We're grieving. We're grieving on so many levels, and we're kind of in the worst kind of grief, which is the unknown grief, right? Like, we don't know what is coming at what's going to happen after. We know it's going to be different. We have no idea what it's going to be. So grieving the loss of what we knew, and now we're in that sort of, period where we don't know what that future looks like. So the grief even becomes more pronounced. And what happens in grief, I think, is something that we all need to learn about, read about, and understand. It's just, we're in it. Part of the interesting thing is we're in a natural state, really. Like, we couldn't be in any more of a natural emotional state than we are right now, right? Because we can't control what's going on around us,
yes,
to a great degree. So yeah, I think for sure, I've certainly, reflected on times of my life where I went through grieving periods, or, I can feel that post-traumatic stress triggers, right, happening with this, whether it was the financial crisis of 2008 or a divorce along the way, or, I remember being in university when the crash of 87 hit, and the impact of that on people losing their jobs. Like, all of it comes back, but it's so macro now. You can't even really wrap your head around it, right?
It's a little bit of pre-traumatic stress,
yeah,
isn't
for sure.
it?
Right.
Because we actually don't know what's going to happen. We're in sort of that pre-traumatic stress, right? And so we're all kind of holding our breath. What does the future look like? And this really comes back to what you were saying earlier, in that, what are the things I can control? How can I govern my my time and my energy? And we all, what I think is really interesting, and of course the work that you do is around sustainability, and the work that I do is around sustainability for infrastructure and for governing bodies. But when one of the things I think we're all kind of recognizing is we were all living lives, personally, professionally, collectively, that were unsustainable.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Like,
absolutely.
Well,
yeah.
We knew this.
Yeah.
It doesn't come as a surprise, and yet it still does.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, I didn't know this is how it was going to happen.
Yeah, and it's funny, the foreshadowing. I was on a flight. I was in, like, I felt like the last few weeks I've been on a wave just before the wave hit this shore. So I was in Switzerland for a week with a bunch of banks around the world that do things around the space that we're in. So a Global Alliance for Banking on Values, talking about how do we move, the whole environmental sustainability agenda forward in terms of how we finance it and how we get other banks to change and all that kind of stuff. So I was like leaving Switzerland just as Italy kind of hit, right? And
Right.
And I was heading back to Canada, and then I was in Toronto just as the spring break was arriving and everything was starting to shut down. So I feel like I've been on this added wave of sort of change, and it did make me think a lot this last few days around. You're right. Like we're on a not sustainable path as a species, and on some weird level, I think somebody sent me a little joke about Mother Earth really saying to us, like, go to your rooms, like, go to your room and don't come out until the air gets clearer and the water starts to run and animals start to reappear, and you all kind of have a check-in on what are you up to as a species. So I think that's, understanding that kind of connection between ourselves and land, and it's really important. I think it's a good time to reflect on that and think about how do we want to be coming out of this.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. And that's one of the things I have been thinking about is those conversations actually with my future self, right? And what are some of the lessons coming out of this that I need to maintain, and what would myself 5 years from now tell me today on April 1st? What are those future lessons? And it really, it's been interesting. If you think about that's a question I'll ask. If you think about what would your future self tell you today, April 1st, 2020? What do you think it might say? And I realize I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but what
Yeah, I think one of my hopes of all of this that comes out of this is we get over things like how we look, and we get over things like you have to be in the office to be performing, and we get over things like you can't be vulnerable, or you like I think this is teaching us all of that, right? So as we're peering into each other's houses and the blurry lines between your professional life and your personal life, and everything starts to change, and you're in people's bedrooms, which Tina, you have a lovely view out of your bedroom. I want to
I know she does, doesn't she?
I know I'm like in this green room of my office thinking I gotta change the color. But anyway, I think all of those learnings around our hair color is gonna, like, if we don't get to hairstylist in the next 2 months, we're all gonna be like all of that stuff that we cared so much about. I think hopefully it starts to fall away and start to be more real.
But Tina's been listening as she does, and tracking some of the great conversation that's been happening. Tina, if I could ask you to just reflect on what jumped out at you the most so far. And I'm curious, just as we start to think about wrapping the conversation, if we could take this conversation one level deeper, just for a moment, what would that look like? And what's kind of the question that's coming to surface for you right now?
Thanks for that, Shar. I think it was hit right in the very, very beginning when the acknowledgement of Air Canada needing a bailout connected to the piece of sustainability. That right from the get-go, that's the theme that has arrived, and then connect that to the conversation about control. So where does control sit in our understanding of sustainability? And then I don't see a name, but it came up later, this beautiful piece, and it just popped about the loss of innocence as our first stage of growth. And now I'm suggesting perhaps, and sorry, that was connected to 9/11 was their offering. And now this pandemic as a place of loss of control. And so these places of innocence, control with the message of sustainability. So that's where, and then of course our experience of grief, but the real question is where or what is sustainability now?
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I'm going to ask Wendy if she would pull Sharon up for a minute. Might make Christina pop off for a second. I'd like to just reflect on how Sharon has captured this conversation visually. And I think it'll just take half a second. I'm just curious. I'm always curious how it's caught, what's seen and heard, and how that's captured visually. Can you walk us through it? We might need to be a little closer, but it's not bad. And thank you for feverishly drawing. Thank you, Wendy. That's great.
Okay, so I heard pivot energy, and so that's here. And I heard self-care, grief, and understanding our connection to the land and each other. And I've got more written down, but I'm a slow drawer. So
yeah, that's okay. We'll keep working on it, and we will send it out with the recording. Yeah. I just wanted to reflect on a few things that I heard, and then I just do a closing circle. So if anything comes up for you guys, and what I heard today that probably got me the most was something Jayanne said around grieving. And I've been really, really present to that, like seriously grieving. And it's a shedding. It's, I think it's the loss of the known. It's the loss of the known. And I've always been someone, ever since I was a little girl, I've always needed to know X. And so for me, it's the loss of the grieving in order to remember. And so that's where the hope comes for me. Other things that I heard you say that were really meaningful, and Christina, thank you. To just to keep focusing on the outcome of of what it is, you most desire, the outcome that you're looking for. Focus on where you do have control. Don't forget about the power of a mantra, and celebrate the small wins every day. It's really causing us to rethink the word stable. And I've always considered myself to be someone quite stable. I think it's just such an obvious occurrence. It's just like, it's such an obvious occurrence of our lifetime that it has a very big lesson for us to learn. And I hope we don't miss that lesson. It's an epiphany of gratitude that we can practice on a daily basis. And part of these conversations is just to help us not necessarily reframe it in case, unless that's what we need, and provide some perspective. But really, I think one of the things we could do better, and I think leading forward in faith is about doing better and doing it differently, is actually tracking and gathering the wisdom that's among us. And we say it all the time to each other in these small conversations to our very best girlfriends, but are we saying it and sharing it? And that's what we want to do. So I am going to exit and take my camera back down off the screen, and I'm just going to open it up to each of you to do just a short closing circle, and invite Sharon to be part of that circle as well when we're ready. But thank you for being here today, just on behalf of Powerhouse, and to open up this great conversation. I really appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Awesome. So I guess, based on what Shar just said, Jan, what would you like your final, what do you want people to take away from this conversation?
I think I want people to take away that, I think this has demonstrated that we are a resilient species, and that we will come out of this, and we will be stronger, and we will hopefully have learned a lot of lessons about being present in who we are, careful about making sure that those we love remain center to who we are, and that we will gain a whole bunch of new knowledge. We will grow a whole bunch of new businesses. We will become more resilient into the future. So I think it is a time of reflection, but I'm very hopeful that we'll come out of this as a world, as a world, in a much stronger place.
Yes, more anti-fragile, right? Yeah, and I can't help but think about that sense of us and them, or the paradigm of separateness that's been smashed. And, we're using the term, we're all in this together, but let's not miss the depth and the richness and the heartfeltness of, we really are all in this together. Suddenly the world feels very small, right? It feels very small. This is impacting everybody, and we really are in this together. That sense of separateness is just smashed. Yeah. And so really, I mean, it's kind of what we all want. We just aren't, as we're going through this transformation, it is an unknown. So it's very complex. So Tina, do you want to maybe close us with your thoughts and your images? Thank you.
Thank you. So, Jayanne, I just want to say thank you. I know you have a super high impact position, and you're busy and you're full, and there's a lot of demands on your energy. And what I heard you say is something that I think it goes back to what Christina was saying about the paradigm of separateness. And what I heard you say is that how you lead is very much connected to how you live. And that in this place where Christina just said that this paradigm of separateness is over, the world just got really, really small. I just want to say thank you for being an example of that leading is living. And it was really interesting. I could feel myself wanting to keep coming back to, yes, but tell us how you lead in finance, but tell us how you lead in finance, but tell us, right? And then it just hooked right back into Christina's piece of, and the paradigm of separateness is over. And we're in this small world. I just want to say thank you for the example that you are, and the reminder of our humanity. And I think to close, so what I do as a story person is I thank the story of us. I want to thank the story of us, of all of us that are tuned in, for the collective energy and wisdom in this space, for the listening that we all did together, for the trusting that we will be doing now as the story of us continues to tell us how to be, what to do, and how to live in this new unknown, in the place of the question that was brought to the table today, of the question of sustainability in our humanity. So thank you all. And yeah.
Thank you, ladies. I just wanted to invite Sharon to, a very important piece for us in closing is also the Indigenous wisdom that is here and to be remembered. What comes strong to me today, and curious if anything comes up for Sharon, is the word community and really the unity in that word community. And we might do it through conversation and gathering, but really, to be honest with you, we're really rebuilding the community that we've lost. And Sharon, thank you for being here. Is there any Indigenous wisdom that came strong for you from Grandmother Spider, perhaps this morning?
It's understanding our connection.
Thank you.
To each other and to the land.
Thank you. I love you, Sharon. I appreciate you being here. Thank you all, and thinking of you today. And I feel really good right now. Thank you very, very much.
Me too. Bye.
Bye-bye.